Welcome to Hot Topic and Fresh News. Today is April 1st, 2024. In today's top story, Sudan is facing a severe hunger crisis due to ongoing conflict, aid blockages, and looting. A staggering 8 million people have been displaced due to the strife between the military and the paramilitary rapid support forces. The World Food Program trucks carrying aid have been attacked or detained within the country, and there's a desperate shortage of funds to feed refugees who fled to South Sudan and Chad. In Darfur and other parts of Sudan, children are dying from starvation. Further exacerbating the crisis, it can take up to 3 weeks to secure government permission for food convoys. In addition, a reluctance to engage with the rapid support forces, labeled as a terrorist group by the military, is hindering aid efforts. The uncertainty of control in various regions, coupled with armed groups extorting and robbing passing traffic, including aid convoys, adds to the complex situation. The capital, Khartoum, bears the scars of conflict, with buildings riddled with bullet holes, markets and hospitals looted and burned. Inflation has spiked to a staggering 260%. Fuel is scarce and expensive, and over 70% of health facilities are non-operational, leaving 15 million people without access to healthcare. In the town of Sirba, Darfur, the only functioning clinic has been opened by Premier Urgence Internationale, housed in a partially destroyed hospital. Meanwhile, the World Food Program hasn't been able to distribute food in Darfur since December, and only 5% of the United Nations' $0.7 billion humanitarian appeal for Sudan is funded. The United Nations fears that in the coming months, around 222,000 children could succumb to malnutrition. That's the latest from Sudan, a country grappling with a worsening situation where families are struggling to find food and children are dying of starvation. Stay tuned for more news and analysis here on Hot Topic and Fresh News. Hi there, I'm Emily, your host here on Hot Topic and Fresh News. We're here every day, delivering the news that matters to you. I'm joined by our brilliant commentator, David, who always brings insightful analysis to the table.
Great to be here, Emily. Always a pleasure to break down the headlines with you.
We're so glad you're tuning in, listeners. Remember, your engagement is crucial for our continued success. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and leave us your thoughts in the comment section. And if you find our news coverage valuable, do share it with your friends and family. Today's headline is a sobering one. The situation in Sudan is escalating, with a severe hunger crisis gripping the nation. People are struggling to find food, children are dying of starvation, and aid is being blocked and looted. This is an urgent issue that we all need to be aware of.
I couldn't agree more, Emily. It's a crisis that's impacting millions, and it's essential to stay informed.
Absolutely, David. And we'll be diving deeper into this pressing issue. So stay tuned. You won't believe the extent of this crisis. Together, let's keep informed and work towards making a change. And remember, folks, this is all hot off the press. Stay tuned.
Emily, could you shed some light on the root causes of the hunger crisis in Sudan?
Of course, David. The United Nations World Food Program identifies 2 main causes: access and funding. The ongoing conflict has led to blockages and attacks on the World Food Program trucks, making food distribution almost impossible in many areas. Externally, there's a lack of funding to provide aid for the refugees who fled into South Sudan and Chad.
Speaking of refugees, what's the situation like for them in Chad?
It's truly dire, David. Due to a funding crisis, only the newest arrivals have been receiving food. Cindy McCain, the executive director of the World Food Program, announced that all food distribution in Chad will cease within a week.
That's devastating. Can you talk about the role of the Rapid Support Forces in this crisis?
The Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, is a paramilitary group that's been declared a terrorist organization by the military. It's known to have looted warehouses full of aid during fighting. Now they're encouraging aid organizations to work in areas under their control. However, aid workers are understandably hesitant to engage.
It sounds like aid delivery is not just being blocked by the conflict, but also by the players involved.
Exactly, David. The The situation is compounded by the military's refusal to open key routes into the country and the time it takes to secure government permission for food convoys. So there are multiple layers to this crisis.
What could the future hold if the situation continues?
If the situation continues, Sudan could face a bigger food crisis than Gaza, according to Cindy McCain from the World Food Program. It's a dire prediction, which underscores the urgency of the situation.
Can you talk about the impact of the war on the infrastructure in Sudan?
Infrastructure has been severely affected. Markets, hospitals, and warehouses full of food aid have been looted and often burned. Schools have been bombed or are overflowing with displaced families seeking shelter. This destruction has caused inflation to skyrocket and forced many health facilities to shut down.
How does this affect the healthcare situation?
Around 70 to 80% of health facilities have stopped functioning after hospitals were attacked and doctors were killed and kidnapped. The United Nations reports that about 15 million people cannot access any health care. Also, there's been a serious cholera outbreak infecting over 10,000 people.
What's the situation like on the ground, especially in Darfur?
Darfur is in a state of devastation. The town of Sirba, for example, just saw the opening of its only clinic in a partially destroyed hospital. But many patients can't even afford basic necessities like rice, let alone medications.
What's the status of food aid distribution in the region?
According to the World Food Program, the only major supplier of food aid in the region, the last food distribution was back in December. The military has shut routes into Darfur from Chad since February, severely limiting aid delivery.
How significant is the need for aid in Sudan right now?
The need is immense. Around 50% of all Sudanese people require aid. But unfortunately, only 5% of the United Nations aid request for Sudan has been met. It's a desperate situation made worse by bureaucratic and conflict-related roadblocks.
Let's talk figures. How many children are at risk of dying from malnutrition in the coming months?
It's heartbreaking. The United Nations estimates that around 222,000 children could die of malnutrition in the near future.
How are the families coping, especially those with missing members due to the conflict?
It's a struggle for survival. Many, like Shahrazad Mohammed Ahmed, are trying to support their children by selling small items. But without adequate nutritional intake, they can't produce enough breast milk for their infants, leading to malnutrition.
What solutions are residents resorting to meet their food needs?
In Khartoum, many families are relying on volunteer-run soup kitchens. These kitchens were supervised by emergency committees formed during the pro-democracy protests. However, an internet shutdown has disrupted donations from abroad, which has further strained these services.
Have there been any instances of backlash against those trying to help?
Yes, there have been reports of rapid support forces arresting members of the emergency committees overseeing the soup kitchens, which has led to even more challenges. This war is taking a tragic toll on the people of Sudan. Thanks for tuning into Hot Topic and Fresh News today. We've delved deep into the current situation in Sudan, shedding light on a pressing global issue. Remember to engage with our channel. Your likes, comments, and shares are what fuel us. Be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more in-depth analysis of the news that matters.
And hey, don't forget, we're your daily dose of news. So set those reminders, mark your calendars, and make us a part of your routine. And we've got some exciting content lined up, so stay tuned for that.
We truly appreciate your time and your commitment to staying informed. We're already looking forward to our next episode.
Absolutely. Let's keep the conversation going and continue exploring these important topics together. Stay in the loop, keep your eyes on the news. Our channel's content will amuse. See you next time.